To a Sunrise Elementary School, the start of a process to revisit some of our current boundary challenges and process to gather community input to address these challenges. I'm David Law, Superintendent, and I'd like to announce some of the people in the room and kick off the night. I'll start with our school board members that are here tonight. Board Chair and Blaine Representative Marcy Anderson. Board Vice Chair Nicole Hayes. Treasurer, Clerk Jeff Simon, and Treasurer Aaron Harris McCardle. And Nicole represents Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, Fridley, and Coon Rapids. Jeff represents Coon Rapids, a little bit of Blaine and Andover. And Aaron represents Ramsey and a little bit of Andover and Anoka. Also in the room tonight, Associate Superintendent for Elementary Schools, Dr. Mary Wolverton. Our Chief Operations Officer, Greg Cole, Principal, Deb Shepard, Communications Director, Jim Skelly, our Transportation Director, Keith Paulson, who has been a rock star this last week as we're trying to get our kids to school. He's done an amazing job getting all of our buses on time. Thank you, Keith. All of these people are here tonight. Our format for tonight is an information session and an online survey. All of us are going to be here to gather information from you. You can talk to any of us. The best way to get documented feedback is to use the online survey. Because no one here is taking notes tonight. We're listening, but we're steering you to the spot because our online survey drives information. I can't emphasize that enough as we've gone through that process. We don't want to be here tonight. Overcrowding in schools is disruptive. We're going to talk you through the process of how we got here. Believe me, as a superintendent, boundary changes are almost as uncomfortable as COVID is. The last two things anyone wants to face, but we're going to go through what you would prefer happens with your school, and the board's going to make a decision on that. And they're going to make that decision in February. So this is going to be what Sunrise parents say is the best way to address the current challenge. And we don't have a plan when we came here tonight. We have two options that we've used in the past, and we have your input for space. So we're going to run through background information tonight in our current situation, growth in Blaine and the impact on the Sunrise attendance area, strategies to accommodate that student growth that we've used in the past, initial options that we have come up with, guidelines for decision making, a process and timeline, and how you can provide feedback. So I'm going to turn it over to our Associate Superintendent for Elementary Schools, Dr. Mary Wolverton, who's going to walk through some background information on this tonight. Dr. Mary Wolverton, here we go.
Thank you, Superintendent. So a little bit of background information in relation to past processes as well as our current process. So the Anoka-Hennepin School District approved the current elementary boundaries the fall of 2018. The approved boundaries were implemented the fall of 2019, and the boundaries at the elementary level are expected to last for 5 years. When we went through that process, that was our focus at the elementary level, was 5 years. Sunrise Elementary has experienced rapid growth in the attendance area, exceeding the projections from both the city and from the district. Current enrollment of 1,135 students has stretched beyond the building capacity to meet board-approved class size ratios. I'm going to turn it over now to Chief Operations Officer Greg Cole.
Thank you, Mary. So I think a good question is that may be on a lot of people's minds is, didn't you people know that growth was going to occur in Blaine? Like, everybody in Blaine knows that growth is occurring in Blaine. And I think the first thing that I'd say is the existence of a school that is intended to have 1,000 students in Blaine is an evidence that we were aware of that. We worked closely with the city representatives. They were a part of our Fit for the Future process and those meetings that occurred during the 16-17 school year. And while Blaine city officials anticipated significant growth, housing starts occurred faster than expected, beginning in about mid-2017 in Blaine. By 2018, housing starts accelerated, particularly in the area directly north of Sunrise Elementary School. Construction on Sunrise had already begun by May of 2018. This is just a chart. If you want to kind of understand this, the purple, those are housing starts in Blaine dating back to 2006. And the gold or orange are townhomes and villas starts dating back to 2006. And you can see during the 16-17 school year, that's when the community task force district-wide met to discuss enrollment issues that we were having based on building that was occurring across our school district. We had a similar dynamic occurring in Ramsey, which is why we have a school exactly like this in the city of Ramsey that was built at the exact same time. The referendum to approve the Fit for the Future bond, the two elementaries were a part of that. That was a $250 million bond. It also included upgrades to all 5 of our high schools, a middle school, River Trail Learning Center, and Champlain Brooklyn Park Academy, among other things. So that was approved in November of 2017. The design for this building in Brookside was completed by February of 2018. And Sunrise opened in the fall of 2019. So you can kind of see some of these spikes that we talk about occurred before while we were in the design phase for this building. Of the following Blaine cluster elementary schools, and we say cluster because McKinley is actually located in Ham Lake, but McKinley, Johnsville, Madison, Jefferson, and Sunrise, only Sunrise has had significant gain in enrollment during the time period that I've shown you. So if you look, starting in 2019, these are actual, we do counts, October 1 counts, and those essentially are who's in school on October 1. That's a reporting mechanism to the Department of Education. You can see that the schools I listed actually declined in enrollment from 2019 to 2021, even though they're located in the Blaine cluster, or most of them are in the city of Blaine. However, you see Sunrise increased 17% during that time. So it was the only school that grew, and it grew significantly. Just to get a sense of our school district, on the left, that's the entire school district. So along the north, you see Ramsey, Andover, Ham Lake, little chunks of East Bethel, and then all the way down to the south, actually we dip into Fridley. So you can, and Dayton in the bottom left, and Sunrise is right here in the bottom right. If you notice, the growth that occurred in Blaine, the majority of it and the spike and the increase occurred specifically in the Sunrise attendance area. And I'm gonna use a quote from Nick Herman, who's at the back of the room. He does a lot of our statistics. He said, it's difficult to build a matrix, a predictive matrix for enrollment in a sod field, okay? Meaning that you don't know whether or not that's gonna remain a sod field. If it's sold, it's not necessarily sold to a developer building homes. It could be sold to, well, for example, there's a site in Blaine where eventually there's gonna be a Hy-Vee, right? I mean, you never know what it's gonna be built for. So some of these sod fields to the north of Sunrise, at the time of the Fit for the Future, you know, we didn't anticipate or know for sure what was gonna be done with those, if they were gonna be sold at all. Okay, so I'll turn it over to Deb Shepard.
Thank you. So some of the information that I today is information that you have heard from me and some of the correspondence that I've sent to you. So this doesn't happen very often in the district, but it has happened in the past in some pockets. And so that's, we look to what has happened in the past and what has worked. So for a period of time, the city of Ramsey was experiencing a similar growth. And some of the solutions were that the kindergartners from Ramsey Elementary went to Wilson Elementary for 1 year and then returned to Ramsey when they were in first grade. Another time period in the district, Ramsey had another growth, and they moved fifth graders to the Sandburg campus. So those mirror some of the things that have been suggested thus far for possible solutions. I feel like this was before my time, but there was a period of time where Anoka High School had capacity issues, and for a short time period, they moved the ninth graders and created a campus at the district office. So that's just to give you some history that while this doesn't happen often, it does happen, and we have some past practices to look back on. So one of those suggestions is to utilize additional space at Roosevelt Middle School. And that would be similar to that Sandburg scenario I shared on the previous slide. Another scenario is to send some of our kindergarten students to Johnsville. They have some additional space that would allow that to happen. And that's similar to the Ramsey to Wilson scenario. And then part of this community meeting this evening is to see if parents or community members have some other ideas that haven't been thought of. So if we utilize additional space at Roosevelt, we would move the entire fifth grade to Roosevelt. Currently we have 176 fourth graders. I rounded it up to 180 given that we continually get new students. Those students would be placed in a common area of the school. If you have younger children, you might know that right now at Roosevelt there's preschool. So I went over and did a site visit. They're kind of in their own, they are in their own section of the building. They have their own entrance and exit. They do everything independently of the middle school. So that's what that could possibly look like if fifth grade went to middle school, or was at the middle school site. If this option were to be chosen, the Sunrise students that go to Roosevelt would be allowed to stay at Roosevelt through 8th grade. So that would eliminate any additional transitions that the students would have. Say, for example, if your neighborhood currently goes to Northdale Middle School. So the district would provide that option of staying at Roosevelt. And so this is just to show you what a classroom looks like at Roosevelt compared to a 5th grade classroom at Sunrise. Another suggestion that was brought forth was having some of our kindergarten students go to Johnsville. We wouldn't need the entire kindergarten to go to Johnsville. We're looking at approximately 120 students. So historically, since we opened, we've been running about 200 kindergartners a year. So we, if we sent 120 kindergarten students to Johnsville, that would free up 6 classrooms here at Sunrise to help with that growth. So we visited Johnsville. It's an elementary school, so it has all of the same things that Sunrise has as far as curriculum and opportunities and programming. So that would be the kindergarten option. And here shows a kindergarten classroom at Johnsville and at Sunrise are similar. Johnsville, all of our schools are great, but just to show you that they're very similar. And now I turn it back over to Mary or Greg.
Thank you, Deb. So as we go through the boundary, we have guidelines that support us in our decision making. So we just want to go through a few of those parameters that support us in that process. One is that when we go through a boundary process, we follow state and federal guidelines. We also look at optimizing and utilizing efficient use of district resources. At the elementary level, we are very cognizant and adhere to the board-approved elementary class size ratios. And then the last point on the slide is that we provide maximum stability for students through their elementary experience, minimizing as many transitions as possible. The next steps in determining solutions for fall 2022. One, as we're doing right now, we're engaging the Sunrise community with public input meetings during the month of January. We will also take the information that the community is providing us during this time and bring that forward to the school board at the January 24th school board meeting. The school board will arrive at a decision at the February 28th school board meeting. And then after that school board decision, we will provide communications to the parents and guardians within the Sunrise School community. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Law. Thank you.
One of the things that the district has done over time, and you saw this in examples, you can imagine in the 70s and 80s where boundaries changed every year. And you might have a third grader that went to a different school in fourth grade and a different school in fifth grade because of where people moved. And as much as boundary changes are traumatic for families, at some point in time our school board said, this is chaos every spring, let's not do this anymore. Let's make boundaries that we think can last at a minimum of 5 years for elementary schools and 10 years for secondary schools. And that's where the 5 years comes from. If you haven't heard it, I want to say it overtly, we will have to adjust the boundaries of this school somewhere likely on the fringes of this to fit this building. That will need to happen in 2 years. One of the things that is a frequent question is, well, just build. Just build space at this site. And the two challenges with that just build space at this site are, one, we can't build from now till fall. We have to go through the permitting process, and specifically unique in this area, the watershed process takes about a year in planning. So it's not possible for us to build. And when people say, well, can you put portables on? Amazingly, cities don't like to do them, and that process takes almost as long. On top of that, the benefit of a large district is that our large community can contribute to expenses over 250,000 people and drive them down. The disadvantage is it's really hard to convince a large community in Brooklyn Center and Brooklyn Park, in Dayton and Ramsey to make an investment in Blaine. Just as hard as it would be to say to you, would you mind raising your taxes for a facility down in Brooklyn Center? It's hard to gather. That's why when we go out to the community, we try to impact every community so we get support. So it's very challenging to overnight. An addition of this caliber would be probably $4 or $5 million addition, a significant investment. So we can't build our way out, and certainly not in the time frame we have. Of the solutions we've suggested, and someone actually has already provided one for the district, they said, how about if we do a Johnsville K-2 school and a Sunrise 3-5 school? And there's some value to that. It's very creative. I will tell you, just based on past experience, if you're the parent of a kindergartner, first grader, second grader, or third grader right now, you're feeling pretty good, because the two proposed solutions are kindergarten or fifth grade. All of a sudden, you're splitting up entire families with K2 and 3-5, and now a lot of people are anxious. Not that that's a bad idea, but we did that at Monroe and Evergreen Park during our last boundary process, and we tried to split those two schools, and I did those community meetings, and they said, no. We don't want any part of splitting our kindergartner from our fourth grader if we don't have to. Not that we wouldn't do it, but that's the pushback that those families gave at that point in time. It adds another transition. As parents in this school who are impacted, we have space, you've heard, 5 classrooms at Johnsville that we could use for 2 years. We've got a chunk of classrooms at Roosevelt that we could use for 2 years. That's our next boundary change. We can't lower your class sizes by adding a teacher here at any grade levels. We've stopped anyone who doesn't live in the district from coming to this school. The board formally approved that in December. It's only people who live in this area. How do we use those 2 spaces to meet your expectations and do right by your children for 2 years until we change boundaries? That's what we're here for tonight. Understanding that if one solution is everyone can live with us in this building overcrowded for 2 years, if that's the overwhelming choice, we could bring that back. But they are, if you're wondering what does that mean, we're offering 20 or 21 students in a kindergarten classroom across the district. It might be 26 or 27 here. And that's what we're trying to avoid. We're offering 30, 29 for 5th grade. It might be 35 here. We're trying to avoid that because we try to give your students as much individual attention as possible. That's why we're here today. So what's next is there's surveys. You can text amongst yourself. You can come and ask any one of us questions. You can email over and over again. What I can't stress enough is we don't want to be here irritating you. We're trying to find a solution that's right for your children, and we apologize. The other piece that Greg said that I talk with Blaine city officials. I go to the Blaine Business Council all the time. 10 acres can be 10 one-acre houses, or it can be 40 quarter-acre plots. That probably doesn't matter to anyone except 10 houses and 40 houses give a lot different numbers of children to a school. We didn't know what size plots were coming in around Sunrise. At one point in time, there was going to be a significant chunk of $1-million homes. I think that shifted, but all of that is tough to predict 3 or 4 years out. So for that, I sincerely apologize. We're slated to be here for another hour. Please visit with any one of us. The experts on demography are Nick and Keith. Construction is Greg. Mary and I have certainly worked through a lot of boundary changes in programming, or Deb Shepard, and all the board members are here for you. And we'll be here for the next hour or take a survey online. Thank you for coming tonight.